With that, let us bring in former advisor to Donald Trump, Jason Miller. And Jason, you heard in Maddie's report the Democrats touting all of the things that they got. But to me, they didn't really get anything. All they got was a promise to hold a vote on Obamacare subsidies. So, Jason, what was the point of all this?
Well, exactly. There was no point. This entire shutdown was unnecessary. It was unneeded. And the only reason why it happened is because Senator Chuck Schumer and other Senate Democrats are scared to death of the extremist wing of their party, the AOCs, and they're worried they're going to get primary challenges. I really think that there's going to be a reckoning here, both from Americans, travelers who were stranded at airports or had flights canceled, members of the military who had to stand in line for food banks because they didn't have money coming in because of what the Senate Democrats did. And also, I think there'll be a reckoning, as we saw from Ro Khanna saying this about Senator Schumer, from the extremist left within the Democrat base saying, Chuck Schumer, why did you cave? So this was completely unnecessary. It was unneeded all along. Senator John Thune said, just simply pass the continuing resolution, open government, then we could talk about health care. But instead, Chuck Schumer decided to hold everybody hostage.
Again, the exact same continuing resolution that everybody voted for back in March. Nothing changed except for the primaries from the left that you just mentioned. For the rest of this week, Senate Democrats can really do this the easy way, or they can do this the hard way. They can fast track the process to get this to the House quickly, or they can force it to just drag on all week long. Which path do you think the Democrats in the Senate will choose?
I think even though many of the Senate Democrats will echo the thoughts of Bernie Sanders saying that they didn't like this vote, I think the reality is that the vast majority, the biggest group of Senate Democrats, are glad that some of their colleagues caved because this is what everybody wanted. There was no one at home who was saying, Senators, thank you for keeping the government shut down. This was massive chaos. We saw what it did to the markets. We saw from Secretary Bessent saying the impact that this has had on the economy. And Americans want to get going with life. And we don't want to be held up and held hostage by nonsense political games.
All right, I'm going to put this in the category of good news, even though obviously we didn't need to get here this way. This other thing could really be good news. Let's get to this now. President Trump promising a tariff dividend to all Americans. Quote, people that are against tariffs are fools. We are now the richest, most respected country in the world with almost no inflation and a record stock market price. 401ks are highest ever. We are taking in trillions of dollars and will soon begin paying down our enormous debt, $37 trillion. Record investment in the U.S., plants and factories going up all over the place. Here's the key part, Jason, a dividend of at least $2,000 a person, not including high-income people, will be paid to everyone. Jason, how realistic is this? Could our bank accounts actually see a boost?
So I love this idea from President Trump, and this is the way that he always looks outside of the political norms and says he can deliver for the American people. We're still digging our way out of the hole that Joe Biden left us, 4 years of absolute financial chaos. And we're seeing what President Trump is doing with the big, beautiful bill, the no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, no tax on overtime. But many Americans are still struggling to get back on foot after what they saw from Joe Biden. And so I think this idea to take $2,000 per person with the exception of the higher wage earners and say, let's give Americans a little bit of a boost here, let them get some of that credit that's coming in from the tariffs, I think would be a great shot in the arm. It'll dovetail right with what President Trump is doing by bringing down gas costs and other costs and keeping inflation low. So I love it. I hope they do it.
I hope they can do it, but also pay down the $37 trillion in debt that you heard the president mention there. If they can do both, I think that is a win-win, but we will see. Jason Miller, thank you, sir, for getting up with us on a Monday.
Thank you.
Right now, the end may be near for the longest government shutdown in history after 8 Democrats, including our next guest, voted with Republicans to break the filibuster in a key first step. Democratic Senator Jeanne Shaheen joins us now to talk about it. Senator, thanks so much for joining us.
Good morning.
Can you give us an idea and our viewers an idea what happened behind the scenes to have you, Senator Kaine, Angus King, Catherine Cortez Masto, Jackie Rosen, and John Fetterman, as well as Maggie Hassan and Dick Durbin, all come together to get to the 60 threshold? Can you bring us behind the scenes for that?
Well, there had been discussions going on really since the shutdown about how could we work together to end this? How could we make sure that we can address health care costs for the millions of Americans who are seeing their health care costs rise as the result of the bill that was passed in the summer that the president wanted. And so I think this agreement gives us an opportunity to continue to do that work. We're going to have a vote, and I believe there are a number of Republicans who are going to join us in trying to address health care costs for Americans, but we're also turning the government back on. We're making sure that the people of America can get the food benefits that they need, that air traffic controllers can get paid, that federal workers are able to come back, the ones who were let go, that they get paid, that contractors get paid, that aviation moves forward. So we are going to be able to continue to fight about health care because we're going to have a vote in December.
So Senator Chuck Schumer, your leader on the Senate, said, I cannot support a continuing resolution that fails to address health care. I am voting no. Did you do this outside leadership, and was there a big push for you not to join the others and break the 60 threshold?
No, we kept leadership informed throughout. And I think it's important to remember who's responsible for why we got into this shutdown. We are here because we are concerned about the health care costs rising significantly on millions of Americans. And we didn't have any indication before the shutdown started that our Republican colleagues were willing to address it. Now, Speaker Johnson is going to have to bring the House back in. He's been AWOL since the beginning of September when we were in the middle of the shutdown. Leader Thune has agreed that we will have a bill that we will write that will give us an opportunity to work on those health care costs. And we believe there are a lot of Republicans, including a lot of Trump supporters, who want to see us do something about this because their costs are going up. If you look at who benefits from these premium tax credits, 76% of the recipients are in states that Donald Trump won in the last presidential election.
Right. And just to give you people at home an idea of how everyone weighed in, this came down late last night. A lot of people who were still in bed did not know it. Bernie Sanders comes out and says it was a very bad night. I told you what Schumer said. And then Ro Khanna over in the House says Senator Schumer is no longer effective and should be replaced. If you can't lead the right to stop health care and premiums from skyrocketing for Americans, what will you fight for? Well, after the longest shutdown in history, I think that's fighting. But what is your take on what Ro Khanna is saying? Do you think Chuck Schumer should leave leadership?
Well, I hope that people who are concerned about health care will stay focused on who's responsible for why we're in this situation. It's because Speaker Johnson has been unwilling to take up legislation. It's because President Trump has failed to weigh in and understand what a big issue this is for Americans. Now, hopefully, both of them will now figure out that they've got to do something about this because people are hurting. President Trump talked a lot about affordability over the weekend. Well, this is a big affordability issue for millions of Americans. We need to do something about it. This agreement gives us an opportunity to continue that fight.
Senator, you're known as one of the most reasonable people in the Senate. So as much as health care is an issue, you know better than anyone when those health care subsidies were passed, that was supposed to sunset. That was how it was written. So they never were supposed to continue to begin with. It's just such a, even though the objective of giving people quality health care is always admirable, continuing these subsidies was never the intent of the Democratic president.
No, I just disagree with that. I sponsored the legislation in 2019 that was introduced. I sponsored it again when we did it during COVID. I sponsored it again when we did it after COVID. And I urged an extension of these affordable tax credits because I knew how important they are to millions of Americans who are now not going to be able to afford their health insurance. And that's going to have a ripple effect throughout the health system. So this is something that we have tried to extend for literally months this year. And we have been 4 times I moved to extend those affordable premium tax credits. And 4 times they were denied by the majority in the Senate.
And Senator, do you agree that the reason why you need additional subsidies is because the Obamacare Affordable Care Act isn't working? These are emergency fixes. It's spackle on something that's bursting at the seams. Do you agree with that?
Actually, I don't agree with that. In New Hampshire, we have had 4 consecutive years where we have both reduced the number of people who are uninsured and reduced the costs of premiums. Now, is there work we need to do? Absolutely. And I hope now that Republicans and the president will come to the table and agree that we need to address health care more broadly for those people who can't afford it.
I think it's a great point. Now, do you think that others might join you and get past the 60? And or do you worry about the 60 threshold being somewhat tenuous and pressure could change people's vote by the time we have the real vote?
No, I don't worry about that, because I think people are looking at the millions of Americans who have been affected by this shutdown, the people who are struggling to get food. And I was disappointed that President Trump has refused to fund the SNAP benefits, the first president during a shutdown who refused to make sure that people could continue to eat.
But you know that that was put forward as a solo option, and it was rejected. You know, they only had the same Democrats voting for it. There was SNAP benefits, individual, military pay, individual, and it was all rejected.
But we're in an agreement now that will fund those food benefits for people. It will bring back federal employees who were let go during the shutdown. It will make sure that everybody gets their back pay, that contractors get their back pay. That's important. We need to get this economy moving again. That's why what I'm focused on, as well as making sure we get a vote and we do something about the cost of health care for millions of Americans.
And I'm sure Senator Thune gives you his word. His word is good. And I'm sure you believe that.
I believe his word is good.
I do, too. Thanks so much for doing this. Thanks for doing the show. And hopefully it's a glide path to getting our government open again. Thanks, Senator.
So 8 senators who caucus with Democrats have broken rank with their party to advance a Republican plan to end the shutdown. A vote is still to come. The measure would then head to the House for final passage.
So the group is doing this despite getting no guarantees on their one big demand. That was an extension of the tax credits for Obamacare subsidies. And that's drawing fury from some fellow Democrats. After 40 days of furloughs, though, and flight cancellations, the group says it was simply time.
Let me just say this. With the government open, we can focus on passing a full bipartisan budget for 2026.
I understand that not all of my Democratic colleagues are satisfied with this agreement. But waiting another week or another month wouldn't deliver a better outcome.
It was our judgment, after 6 weeks, going on 7 weeks of this shutdown, that path wasn't working.
Aisha Hasni has the latest from Capitol Hill, and I'm sure that those senators can smell jet fumes and the possibility of being able to leave.
Hey, Dana and Bill, good morning to you. It's been a stunning couple of hours here on Capitol Hill. Think about this. Think about the No Kings rallies, the massive rallies nationwide. Think about 40 days of a government shutdown. Think about last Tuesday's election results. All for what? The Democrats accepted an offer that was always on the table. There is about to be a reckoning in this party when the House comes back to the Hill. Here's what happened last night. 8 centrist Senate Democrats, they voted alongside Republicans to break the filibuster, and that unlocks the door to ending the government shutdown. Here's the deal. It is a CR, a continuing resolution to fund the government through the end of January. It restores SNAP benefits. It rehires workers who were laid off during the shutdown, and it also passes a couple of funding bills. The shutdown deal skips their crown jewel, the whole reason they were fighting in the first place, to extend the Obamacare subsidies. Instead, they got a promise to hold a vote on it in December. Let me be clear about this. It's not a vote right now. There's no guarantee it's going to pass, no guarantee the House would ever even take it up. Here are some of those Democrats explaining why they voted yes.
It wasn't working. How long would it take to not get a response to say it isn't working?
There was no vote that we were going to get on the Affordable Care Act, premium tax credits. We have a guaranteed vote by a guaranteed date on a bill that we will write, not that the Republicans will write.
Democratic base is furious. There are folks out there that are calling for Chuck Schumer's head for not holding out on this. And Dana, this is just the first big step. The Senate now has to try to come to a time agreement to skip a bunch of other Senate steps to get to the final passage. If they can pass it today, maybe tomorrow, they can send it over to the House, and then the Speaker will recall the House, bring everybody back, and then they'll try to get it done sometime this week. Dana?
Aisha, thank you so much.
So Byron York now here to talk about this, following you on X all weekend. Byron, let's talk about the fallout. Democrats did not have the votes. In fact, they've never had the votes for this.
You know, it's been a rocky road, but the end result of this has been clear from day one, which is the party that loses a government shutdown is the party that attaches conditions to reopening the government. In all of our shutdowns, we've had one party that says, oh, my issue is so important that I simply cannot allow the government to keep functioning until we address it. And the other side says, well, wait a minute, let's get the government running and then we'll talk about your issue. And the party that attaches the conditions is the party that always ends up giving up because the public gets tired of the government being shut down. This one went longer than most, and the public is really tired of it.
You know who else is tired of it, or tired of each other? It's the Democratic Party. Most of the headlines today are about Democratic infighting, which I think is to the Republicans' benefit, and the Democrats are going to have to go through this one way or the other. Ro Khanna, the congressman from California, said this: Senator Schumer is no longer effective and should be replaced. If you can't lead the fight to stop health care premiums from skyrocketing for Americans, what will you fight for? And then that governor from California, Governor Newsom, he said this: tonight's Senate vote on the federal government shutdown should have been a time for strength. Instead, we saw capitulation and a betrayal of working Americans. The American people need more from their leaders. And that's actually mild. If you saw what some of the other Democrats were saying, they used a lot of words that begin with the letter F.
This is just incredible. It's Monday morning. Last Wednesday morning, we were talking about Democrats savoring their victory, having gotten over their slump, having new momentum. That's all we were talking about 5 days ago. And now it's Democrats involved in a bitter civil war. Well, these are tensions that always existed inside the Democratic Party between its progressive wing and a dwindling number of people who call themselves centrists. And we just saw it. We basically have 40 Democrats in the Senate who wanted to hang tough and keep this shutdown going forever, apparently, and 7 or 8 of them who decided that it was time to give in. That's the fight inside the Democratic Party, and it's not going away all the way through their presidential nominating process.
Thank you, Byron. Still need to put some oil in the gears, but they'll do that step by step in the Senate, the House, and then eventually the Oval Office. Thank you.
I believe none of those senators that we just put up, I don't think any of them have an election next year.
Might be right about that. Dick Durbin's one of them leaving, too. Yeah. Thank you, Byron. Nice to have you.
Thanks.
So it took apparently a lot of courage to get this done on the Democrat side. 8 Senate Democrat caucus members voted with Republicans to break the filibuster, a massive leap toward reopening the government. But it's just the first step. And those Senate Dems have sparked a fire of rage, igniting a civil war among members of their own Democratic Party. So they are taking some heat now for the decision they made to put the country and suffering Americans ahead of their own politics. This is Outnumbered. I'm Harris Faulkner, here with my co-host, Kayleigh McEnany, also joining us today, Kennedy, host of the Kennedy Saves the World podcast, Cheryl Casoni, Fox Business anchor and host of American Dream Home on Fox Business, and David Asman, rounding out the contention of Fox Business with us today. And we are really, really grateful to have him.
Take it over.
All right. Well, the U.S. Senate voted 60-40 to pass the GOP's revised spending package overnight. And again, it's the first step in a series of procedural events, which could take days. We pray that it won't. The 8 members of the Democrat caucus who voted with Republicans are either retiring, so they basically had nothing to lose, or not facing re-election in 2026. Sunday night's Senate vote is only further exposing divisions among the Dems.
We are going to fight legislatively, fight back home, fight in the courts, and bring this fight in the elections.
I think there's going to be a lot of very angry people out there in this country. I know there will be a lot of angry people out there in this country, having watched just a handful of Democrats join with Republicans. There's no way to defend this.
What this Senate is about to do is make a horrific situation even worse.
Okay, you know why he's so angry, Chris Murphy, right? Because he didn't get what he wanted in this whole, I don't know, extortion move. Well, it doesn't stop there. Democrat politicians are voicing their concerns over X, calling last night's vote a mistake, something they will not support, even going as far as calling Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer no longer effective and saying that he should be replaced. Airlines, which have been dealing with the brunt of the fallout outside of the 42 million people who need food aid, that is. The airlines are praising the vote, but there's still a mountain to climb. Flights canceled, federal workers not getting paid, SNAP recipients still not getting their food assistance benefits. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy says the issues from the shutdown are not going away immediately.
It's only going to get worse. I look to, the 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, you're going to see air travel be reduced to a trickle.
The President Trump on his Truth Social today posted, all air traffic controllers must get back to work now, 3 exclamation points. Anyone who doesn't will be substantially docked. For those air traffic controllers who were great patriots and did not take any time off for the Democrat shutdown hoax, I will be recommending a bonus of $10,000 per person for distinguished service to our country. David Asman, you are nodding. Your thought on that?
Well, it's very interesting, first of all, that it is now revealed, most of us realized it was the Schumer shutdown. I mean, it was a Democratic shutdown. Even though the media, about 85% of the media was saying no, it was a Republican shutdown, now it's pretty clear to everybody that the Democrats had control over whether the government opened or not. And the 8 defectors are the ones that are proving that point. First thing that was happening was the human price was just becoming too hard.
It still is. It's not over.
It's not over, but not only on the workers and the service people and everybody who is not getting paid, who should be getting paid for the work they're doing. And I would put number 1 there, the air traffic controllers, at least in terms of public safety. But the inconvenience was also a problem for Democrats. But there was also some threats from the president. The president, I think, kind of played this very well. He realized that there were certain things they were vulnerable on. First of all, the filibuster, suggesting, we know that the next time Democrats have a trifecta, they have the House, the Senate, and the White House, they're probably going to try to pull the filibuster themselves to get a couple of new states in, to get more electoral votes, et cetera. His threat to end the filibuster, I think, scared the heck out of a lot of Democrats. But also his focus on Obamacare and the incredible unaffordability of the Affordable Care Act is becoming very clear. That was the main sticking points of Democrats. They wanted at least $1 trillion, if not more, primarily to bail out a system that we were told was going to lower prices. Instead, prices have increased 96%.
They wanted that money without reforming it. They just wanted more money into it because they don't want to change it. You know what was so ironic about that, though, at the time last week?
Tell me, Alanis.
Well, I'll make it quick. So Obama was speaking because he was trying to help out candidates in mayoral and gubernatorial races on the East Coast. So you had him talking, and then you had Democrats holding out in the longest in our history government shutdown over Obamacare and how broken it is and how nobody can pay for it.
So what would have happened if Obamacare wasn't jacked up and oversubsidized during the pandemic? Would rates have skyrocketed later this year? Yes, they would have, absolutely. So that just goes to show you the program was overwrought, and that the rate hike and the pain that people are going to feel who thought that they could rely on this new government subsidy, they are now completely left in the cold by something. This was a can that was kicked. Obama didn't care because he knew he wasn't going to be in office any longer. So when the pain really hit, it's like having an adjustable rate mortgage. And then all of a sudden it goes fixed rate when rates are high. And you can no longer afford it. And that's the pain that people are feeling right now. But what the Democrats are proposing is just more government. So every time we have more government in one of these horrific hybrid programs, somehow it gets more and more costly. And the only fix when you have too much government for them is more government. Hakeem Jeffries is running around saying, we have an affordability crisis. People can't afford everything. Well, maybe their taxes are too damn high because they're paying for broken programs.
Like the rent in New York, remember him?
Exactly right.
All right. A column in the New York Times is arguing that before the Senate Dems decided to cave last night, quote, Dems were on a roll, so why stop now? The piece explains, though, Democrats were winning this one. Polls showed that most voters blamed Republicans, not Democrats, for the current shutdown. And last week's Democrats wrecked Republicans in the elections, and Trump blamed his party's losses in part on the shutdown. Democrats were riding higher than they have been in months. It's worth noting the headline, Democrats were on a roll, why stop now, was changed. It now reads, what were Democrats thinking? Cheryl.
Because they made the wrong bet. They put all of their eggs into the basket of Obamacare and ACA, and it has completely failed and powered back up against them. Look, $138 billion is what we spent on those ACA subsidies alone in fiscal 2025. By the way, President Trump has been coming up with ideas. Anybody look at True Social over the weekend? He said, let's take that money, give it back to the American people, put it in their
It's a
pockets.
great idea.
And you know what? It actually fixes the biggest thing that people like David and I were yelling about when they were trying to pass Obamacare in 2009, 2010 on Fox Business. We said there's two things that are missing from this: tort reform, and there's no competition in the health insurance market. Those two things, I believe, is what made Obamacare fail. We knew it then. It has come to fruition now. It is a failure, and the Democrats are so misguided.
And what was so interesting were all those Dems who were pushing for single payer and getting everybody. Can you imagine if everybody were on this program? What would we do? Well, you couldn't keep your doctor.
Well, and President Obama promised that. That's probably why he has been silent. But the other thing is the real pain to the American public. You mentioned the flight delays, the cancellations.
Food.
Now, the three biggest headlines are SNAP, the flights, and air traffic controllers, and no paychecks to federal workers, not ACA. They've messed up, I think. And I think they're realizing that today.
Well, they signed something that didn't have ACA in it.
Yeah. You know, a reporter asked Tim Kaine, do you wish you would have found an off-ramp sooner? Tim Kaine was one of the 8 senators who all of a sudden had, you know, an epiphany. Let's open the government. Well, Tim Kaine responded to the reporter, I was so focused on the Virginia elections, I wasn't in this discussion on the health care to see how dug in they were.
Wait a minute.
So he just admits, I was so focused
So
on
nobody
the
in
Virginia
his
elections.
state is on food assistance? Nobody was suffering?
Of course they are.
200,000
Folks are
workers who aren't getting
suffering
paid.
across the country. And tomorrow, TSA workers are not getting their second paycheck.
Wow.
And tomorrow, air traffic controllers are not getting their second paycheck. And I want you to listen. This is what Tricia McLaughlin told me is the real cost of what is happening. Listen.
With each passing day, American travelers are really going to be facing increased delays and increased implications that happen because our TSA workers are going without pay. As you mentioned, we have talked to many officers who they're sleeping in their cars. They have just tens of dollars left in their bank account.
Did you hear what she said? There are TSA workers sleeping in your cars, okay? Yeah. And that's great that, you know, you get the paycheck. I'm so glad that Trump is doing that, the bonus for those who came. But the reality is some people couldn't afford to come. Some people couldn't afford to sleep in their cars. Some people couldn't afford to miss a paycheck. So how do we make sure this never happens again? Number one, Senator Kennedy put up legislation about withdrawing pay from members of Congress. I know there are constitutional requirements, but he has a workaround. He says, let's put the money in an escrow account and pay them in the aftermath. That needs to be done so this never happens again. Congress shouldn't get paid if TSA workers are not. And number two, you mentioned the filibuster. Dems are going to do away with it entirely. I think it should be eliminated for spending bills.
Can I just
Those
say
are the two ways this will never happen again.
Hold on one second,
Okay.
David, because you're the only one who's worked in the White House on the couch. So I want to ask you this question. Shutdowns. Okay, there was a bill that was put forth. Langford was talking about this. Senator Langford, can we just narrow it to when it's a spending bill that we don't need a 60% majority so this never happens? Because the president he learned some lessons about shutdowns when he wanted one over the wall.
Exactly. The second longest shutdown happened very shortly ago, President Trump's first term. The longest one, President Trump's second term. It's because Democrats have a Trump derangement syndrome problem. And in order to ensure this doesn't happen again, and I don't know, a future J.D. Vance presidency or whatever, you need to end the filibuster for spending bills. TSA workers shouldn't be sleeping in their cars. I'm sorry, it's worth nuking the filibuster so people don't sleep in their cars.
November 24th, voters, that was one of their top issues, illegal immigration. So apparently walls work.
Yeah.
So that shutdown also didn't give Dems what they wanted.
I was just going to say the healthcare industry through all this loves the Affordable Care Act. They're making out like bandits. The amount of money, the increase in the share value of healthcare companies has gone up much greater than the S&P. And a lot of that money, guess where it goes? To a lot of Democrats. The healthcare industry, look at who's receiving some of that money. Liz
shady.
Warren, Bernie Sanders, et cetera.
Welcome
so
to big government.
Follow the money. That's all I'm saying.
We always do.
Johnson serves on the Budget, Finance, and Homeland Security committees. Senator, always good to have you with us. Thank you for being here. You know, it felt at the beginning of the week like Democrats clearly had a good week on election night with some big wins in New Jersey and Virginia. And then this sort of climb down from this standoff over the shutdown. What do you make of the battle that's going on the Democrat side right now, Senator?
Well, first of all, I just want to say how much I appreciate the 8 joining with us to just reopen up the government. Yeah. You know, I've been fighting to get the people who are being forced to work paid. You know, one so far will even pay furloughed workers. We're seeing what's happening in our airports. You know, there was one Democrat staffer said it's going to take planes falling out of the sky before we end this. You know, thank God that didn't happen. So listen, I'm very appreciative. You know, I can say for most Republicans, we want to work with Democrats, for example, on the individuals who are losing all their subsidies. You know, the people above 400% of the federal poverty line. That's a concern. I mean, there's some people really experiencing something. It's probably less than 2 million people, so it's an issue we can probably take care of. And all we've been saying all along is open the government, and we're happy to sit down and talk with you. I know I've always been more than happy to work with any Democrat who's willing to acknowledge that Obamacare hasn't worked. Let's repair the damage done by Obamacare, transition to a system that actually works. I would love that opportunity. And again, I'm appreciative of the 8 Democrats that recognize, now we're not going to let planes fall out of the sky. We're going to open up the government so we can pay the people that are working, that are keeping us safe, that are defending this nation.
Yeah. Well, Republicans held their ground, and I think at some point Democrats got that message. I thought it was very interesting to hear Angus King say, you know, well, we tried to stand up to Trump, but it didn't work. I think a lot of people have learned those lessons across all the years that President Trump has been on the scene. This is what Angus King says about ACA, because you're acknowledging that this is a tricky political issue when people see how much those premiums are going up, even though it was supposed to be a temporary program during COVID. Watch this.
The majority of the increases are in red states. The shutdown was not pressure. Their constituents getting double and triple their health insurance premiums will be pressure, and that's why I think we have a chance to get something across the finish line.
So what are Republicans willing to do on this ACA issue, and do you think that temporary measure should be extended permanently?
Well, first of all, understand about of the 24 million people supposedly on those exchanges, 22 will still get their subsidies. They'll be at the original Obamacare rates, which were quite generous. We're talking about less than 2 million people above 400% of the poverty line that were subsidized with the enhanced subsidies. And yeah, they're facing some real significant premium increases. I've got a proposal we've been talking to some of my colleagues about. But again, it's too early to talk about that. But we recognize that's a problem. We'll now have a time to work on that before the Democrats vote on their proposal. Hopefully we'll have something that the American people support and we can help those folks out. So again, more than willing to acknowledge that problem and more than willing to work with Democrats to solve it.
All right. Senator Ron Johnson, thank you very much. We'll be watching all of this. Just before I let you go, what's the time frame on this? When is the government actually going to reopen?
Well, hopefully everybody yields back time. We can vote and complete this today in the Senate, kick it over to the House. They could do it within a couple of days, and government may be, you know, opening up by the end of the week. But we need consent. We need cooperation of 100 senators, which is sometimes hard to get.
Yeah, no kidding. Thank you very much, Senator.
Sandra, the Democratic Party now facing a deep divide over the shutdown. California Governor Gavin Newsom capturing the mood in a single-word post, quote, pathetic. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, meanwhile, deflecting blame on Chuck Schumer to those who broke ranks.
Leader Schumer and Senate Democrats over the last 7 weeks have waged a valiant fight on behalf of the American people. And I'm not going to explain what a handful of Senate Democrats have decided to do. That's their explanation to offer.
Correspondent Madeline Rivera reports live in Washington. Maybe those Senate Democrats were just concerned about people going hungry and missing their flights, being inconvenienced, because that tends to make people really mad.
Yeah, John, well, you're right. The shutdown has revealed just how far apart the progressives and moderates are, and it's spiraling into this bigger conversation about next year's elections. One of the questions ahead for Democrats is who will lead the party. The ire over Democratic leader Chuck Schumer is in many ways emblematic of their dilemma. Many have come to associate Schumer with the old guard that they're looking to shed in 2026. So check out this post from Massachusetts Congressman Seth Moulton. He's launched a primary challenge against incumbent Senator Ed Markey in what's being seen as a major generational fight next year. Moulton says if Schumer were an effective leader, he would have united his caucus to vote no on the bill last night.
I'm not going to run on a new generation of leadership platform here in Massachusetts and then go down to Washington and vote for the status quo. And so I've been very public about that. Again, respect his service, but time to move on.
But DNC Chair Ken Martin insists there is room in the Democratic Party for different voices.
You saw that play out on election night and throughout the country, right? All of our candidates, whether it was in New York City, Virginia, New Jersey, California, Pennsylvania, and all the places in between which we won, we're focused on the issues that Americans are focused on.
Former President Barack Obama is warning against purity tests.
Tuesday was nice, but we've got a lot of work to do. We had Abigail Spanberger win, and we had Zohran Mamdani win, and they are all part of a vision for the future.
The shutdown fight not only magnifying the Democrats' search for a new leader, it also highlights health care as potentially a key issue in 2026. John.
Yep, purity tests rarely work. Just ask Robespierre. Maddie, thank you.
You got
Sandra?
Hello, everyone. I'm Dana Perino, along with Kellyanne Conway, Jessica Tarlov, Joy Jones, and Greg Gutfeld. It's 5 o'clock in New York City, and this is The Five. After all that, a Democratic Party civil war is erupting tonight, just hours after a breakthrough on the government shutdown. 8 Senate Democrats broke ranks, and they crossed the aisle to support a bipartisan spending plan to reopen the government. It was simple. In return, they're promised a future vote on Obamacare subsidies. The bill still has to clear the House before it reaches President Trump's desk. And here's what the president had to say.
We'll be opening up our country very quickly.
Mr. President, that deal does reverse the mass firings your administration put through during the shutdown. Did you sign off on that, and will you abide by that if this passes?
Well, I will be. I'll abide by the deal. The deal is very good.
Even though Schumer voted no, the knives are out. Progressives are turning him into the scapegoat for a deal that doesn't lock in any guarantee on Obamacare subsidies. Lawmakers like Seth Moulton and Ro Khanna are calling for Schumer to be replaced. Others airing out their grievances with the bipartisan deal.
Oh, I think this whole thing stinks. And I think most members of the House caucus on the Democratic side are absolutely outraged.
We'll continue that fight today, tomorrow, this week, next week, this month, next month, this year, next year.
What this Senate is about to do is make a horrific situation even worse.
There's no way to defend this. And you are right to be angry about it. I'm angry about it.
And some folks in the liberal media want to see Schumer go.
The president is kind of getting what he wanted. It doesn't feel like a gentleman's agreement. It feels like Lucy and the football.
Now you're going to open the government up, and what did you get in return? Right. Nothing? Right. Nothing? This is the end of Chuck Schumer as we go forward.
I think Chuck Schumer, his days are over. If he cannot keep his caucus together, he needs to go. He needs to be replaced.
All right, we've got to have a great discussion. Kellyanne, on the day that this began, I said, we know how this is going to end. It will end with the Democrats having a cave because they don't have the votes. And in the end, it does. But Schumer walked himself into this situation. And now, do you think he'll have to go?
Probably, at least as the minority leader. He's been in politics, Dana, for 50 years, and it's starting to show. So you were correct on day one. You knew how it was going to end. The question was always, when would it end? And it ended almost 40 days later with the exact deal that the Republicans offered 35 days before and were rejected by the Democrats. There's no way to spin it. They caved, they capitulated, they should claim strategic bankruptcy. This is a party bereft of leadership, of vision, of ideas. And Chuck Schumer's had a terrible week. This was just the capper. His week started out with him not even acknowledging whether he voted for Mamdani for mayor, a fellow Brooklynite, and wouldn't even endorse him. And then, of course, he's made nobody happy. The so-called moderates, the 8 aren't happy. The progressives aren't happy. And I think if you're Schumer, you also have to realize that this did nothing for the party's identity crisis of which he is in the center. Because if the entire strategy is get Trump, he just got you. He played you completely. Dana, what I don't understand is the Democrats wanted to die on this hill. It's always the hill for illegal immigrants. First, you lied that the border was secure, and you let in millions and millions and millions of them. They got all kinds of benefits the rest of us can't get. Then you stood there and said, we're going to stop lawful deportations of unlawful people. And now you said we're going to shut down the government to make sure that they get Obamacare subsidies and premiums. And they got absolutely nothing out of it except a headache. If you're Chuck Schumer, you've got to realize this party elected people last week in blue states who never invited Chuck Schumer or Kamala Harris or Hillary Clinton or Bill Clinton to campaign with them. It's a party at odds with themselves. They picked the wrong fight. And I think after 14 CRs going for Joe Biden, they can't turn around and do the same thing for the president. If you're upset, everybody, if you're upset because your flight was canceled, because somebody didn't get a check, you don't know if you're going to get back pay, you only have one party to blame, and it's the Democrats.
I want to get to a bigger picture about the American people with Joey, but let me go to you first, Jessica, about this, because what are you hearing? Is there a serious drumbeat about Schumer leaving, or is that just people airing out their frustration for a day?
It's going to be way more than a day. So you remember what it was like after he voted to keep the government open back in March, and people thought, okay, well, let's kind of see how this goes. And it did feel, actually, surrounding this issue in particular, that the caucus was feeling decent about his leadership. Yes, he was not the #1 surrogate out there on the campaign trail, but Democrats were coming off of a very good electoral week. So the big tent was in, full regalia. I was at a liberal conference on Friday, and people were pretty high on the idea that we were winning races, yes, in some blue states, but also in Mississippi and in Georgia. And that, frankly, we were united around the fact that Democrats are the party that cares about people's health care. And that's what this fight was about. And I think the thing that stings the most is that not only the 8 senators who voted for this, but the reporting shows that there are a few more behind the scenes, apparently, that were telling them, please do this for us. We're more vulnerable than you are. Right. And that they didn't think that we were mature enough to hear that argument out loud, for them to come to us and say, these are the reasons we think we should take this deal. And maybe we should have taken it 3 weeks ago even, but right now I am hearing from constituents that are hungry. I'm hearing from constituents that cannot get to see their families. I am hearing from furloughed employees. So let's hold Senator Thune to his word. And apparently he and Dick Durbin had a conversation before Durbin, push this forward, where Thune said, I assure you I will bring this vote in December. That doesn't guarantee Mike Johnson is going to do it, though. But I understand the celebrating. I feel defeated by this. But Republicans still don't have a health care plan. This election will be about health care. If they are on the record again as not wanting to extend these ACA subsidies that mostly benefit their own voters, that is something that Democrats will be very willing and able to run on in 2026, and that'll spell electoral disaster for them. So it's not as if they're fully out of the woods here.
Joey, I was thinking about you earlier because I feel like you have your finger on the pulse of people. You fly a lot. You're back and forth a lot.
I do fly a lot.
And so the pain became so acute over this past week, and it's not going to stop for a while. You also had military people who were not getting paid. They were having to go to the food banks, for example. There's a lot of people that were dealing with this where the members of Congress continued to get paid. And I think there's a lot of bitterness about how Congress continues to, I don't want to use Lucy with the football because we might use it 5 times in this segment. But it does feel very disappointing for people who already don't like politics.
No, you're right. I think that just the stress and anxiety of should I go on this flight. I think a lot of people didn't have the anxiety of missing a flight because they just decided not to go. They decided not to take the trip. It's not just Veterans Day tomorrow. Today's the Marine Corps birthday, and it's a big deal to all those Marines around the country that want to go to a ball or travel to a ball. So that was kind of how I felt it in my sphere of influence. And happy birthday, Marines. And a lot of them are probably already drunk, and probably have been since yesterday. But, this whole thing, I think there are 28 million people on Obamacare. So, that's not a majority of the country. Is it enough people that Republicans are going to lose seats over it? I don't know. I think at this point, the Democrat play is to leave Republicans with the hot potato, right? Republicans aren't going to extend a bad Band-Aid for a bad law. The question is, if everyone on ACA needs a subsidy from the federal government, then how is Affordable Care Act a good law? Well, it isn't.
How is it affordable?
As it exists, it isn't, as it exists today. But if Republicans, if all we have is John McCain holding a thumb down as a response to it, then neither party has an answer to it, and then it becomes a debate. I think the one thing the Democrats got out of this whole thing was to elevate something that affects less than 28 million people to a national electorate conversation, because I was on the phone with someone that works on this, and most of those subsidies stay in effect in different ways. So it's not like it's all just, all 28 million people are going to pay twice as much. That's factually not true. But if enough of them have to pay enough more, perhaps it does become something that Democrats can use. They're not going to reform health care between now and the midterms. I don't believe that.
Greg, 40 days and 40 nights, and this is what we got.
Gee whiz. I wish we just had a fast forward control from, because everybody knew how this was going to go. And the left is freaking out about this. If you go on Blue Sky, they're screaming about Schumer. Whose fault is this? Who made this mess? You guys made this mess, because we knew how this was going to end. This is just like the present day border hysteria. They destroyed the border. Trump gets elected and fixes it, and then they blame him for the fix. It's just like the shutdown. The Republican side seems so easily understood. Here's the budget. Let's go. The other side says, no, we won't. And even though we're not signing on, you're the one at fault, and people are going to starve. Okay. Then the government opens up, and what do they say? No, you caved, Schumer, you caved. Oh, my God, what are you doing? So wait a second. Who controlled the shutdown again? Because now you're mad that Schumer caved. So apparently he had the finger on the button the whole time, and now you're saying don't cave. I guess that means the starving people never really were starving to begin with. Right. We knew that. We knew that, but we play along because we knew how this was going to end. We just don't have the fast forward control to make it happen. Why do the Dems look so stupid? Not you, Jessica. They live on the surface level of politics, no depth, no nuance. If the Republicans are for X, we have to be Y. They don't understand that this is dead. For the past 10 years, this is totally, with this whole kind of prison of two ideas, it's not working anymore for the American people. What's missing is persuasion. They did not do any persuasion. They did not try to convince anybody why they were right. And maybe it's because they don't have any examples of why they should be right, or maybe they don't have the muscles anymore. And that the Trump derangement, which then became Trump addiction, which is now, as we'll see in the C block, Trump estrangement, they did not build any of the muscles. They didn't preserve any of the muscles of persuasion. You can think, I'm trying to think, there's only one person that is, I mean, sadly for the Democrats, it's Mom Dommy's the only one that might be persuasive, but the Democrats, it's funny. Why do they want health care now? Because they can't talk about crime and they can't talk about immigration. They can't even talk about the economy. So remember, if it's about the extension of an ACA subsidy, I hate to tell you, that's going to be really easy to fix. You just say, all right, we'll delay three months. You want a year, we'll do 6 months. It's that simple. That issue's over. Then what are you going to do? I just came up with that.
My only point I would like to make is that unity beats disunity every single time. And Trump, Thune, and Johnson showed that they can stay together, and they hung tight. And so they are the winners in this. But
why is it that we can see this coming and they can't? That lady said it's like Charlie Brown, the football. It's like, yeah, but everybody knows that. Right. Except them. Like, we all saw the same cartoon.
Exactly. All right. And don't miss Laura Ingram's interview with President Trump. That is airing tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern. She will ask him about Chuck Schumer, caving on the shutdown, and much more.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.